Have you ever woken up with your heart racing, someone's name echoing in your mind, fresh from a dream? There are faces that insist on appearing in our dreams, even when they've long since left our lives, or perhaps never consciously belonged to them at all. Why do certain people keep returning while we sleep? What is the real meaning behind these nightly, repeated, silent, symbolic visits? In-depth psychology, none of this is by chance. These recurring figures in our dreams are clues, fragments of something far greater than our everyday reason usually ignores. It's not just longing, obsession, or random memories. It's a message from the unconscious, trying to guide us towards something that still needs to be seen, felt, or transformed. If you also find yourself wondering what these dreams want to tell you, comment below. I'm ready to listen to my unconscious. From the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung's analytical psychology, repeatedly dreaming of the same person is not merely an emotional or affectionate matter, but a symbolic manifestation of the unconscious attempting to establish dialogue with the conscious mind. Jung saw dreams as bridges between the ego and the deeper contents of the psyche, especially those related to the process of individuation, the path by which we become who we truly are. When someone appears frequently in our dreams, that someone may represent an archetype, a repressed shadow, an emotional projection, or even an aspect of our own self that has yet to be recognized. If it's a figure from the past, they may symbolize something unresolved. If it's someone we admire or desire, they may embody qualities we need to integrate into ourselves. Projection theory explains that we often project onto others aspects of ourselves that we don't recognize or accept. The shadow, in turn, contains everything we have repressed or denied, and it often appears in dreams as familiar faces. Meanwhile, the archetypes of anima and animus, the unconscious images of the feminine in a man and the masculine in a woman, can emerge as people who attract or disturb us in dreams, challenging our conscious identity and expanding our perception. Therefore, these repetitive dreams aren't about others, they're about you. They invite reflection, self-observation, and above all the integration of elements that remain unconscious, but cry out for recognition through dream figures. Ready to move on to the third part? Before that, I need you to define or confirm the 4 subtopics you'd like to address within this main content. I can suggest some if you prefer. Would you like suggestions, or do you already have the subtopics defined? In dreams, the familiar faces that appear aren't mere repetitions of memory, but symbolic representations loaded with psychological meaning. The person who shows up repeatedly in your dreams is often not themselves in objective essence, but rather what they represent to the dreamer. Within analytical psychology, Jung asserted that the language of dreams is symbolic, and every dream figure must be understood in terms of its relationship to the personal and collective unconscious. When someone insists on returning in your dreams, you must ask, what does this person symbolize within my emotional and psychological experience? Is it a figure that evokes protection, abandonment, passion, frustration, insecurity, enchantment? It's not about thinking of them literally, but about what they evoke, often a mirror of unrecognized parts of your own soul. The constant appearance of the same figure may represent an internal aspect projected outward, now returning as a symbolic image, an attempt by the unconscious to reintegrate what was lost, denied, or displaced. Jung saw dreams as the psyche's attempt to balance conscious and unconscious contents. In that sense, the figure that appears in a dream may symbolize an internal conflict that requires closer attention. Sometimes the other represents something the ego resists seeing, a repressed desire, misunderstood anger, an unprocessed memory. That's precisely why the same person returns again and again, because the symbolic content they represent has not yet been assimilated. They become a channel of communication for the unconscious, a bridge between who you are and who you have yet to become. It's common for these figures to take varied forms over time. They may change appearance but preserve the same emotional tone. This shows that it's not about the person's literal identity, but an archetypal energy they embody. For example, someone who saved you during a crisis may represent the inner savior function that needs activation. Likewise, someone who abandoned you may embody an unhealed emotional wound still influencing your conscious decisions. This symbolic mirroring is one of the deepest principles of Jungian psychology. When the unconscious projects a repetitive figure in dreams, It's asking for something to be recognized, accepted, and processed. Until this happens, the image will keep returning, like a silent summons. Often, the person who appears in dreams symbolizes a key to self-knowledge. They represent what lies at the boundary between what we know about ourselves and what remains hidden. It's important to observe not only who appears, but how they appear. What is the dream's emotional tone? Does the person confront you, comfort you, provoke you, watch you? The interaction's details are as symbolic as the character itself. Jung said the unconscious speaks in images, and each image contains a message to be deciphered. This decoding isn't rational or logical in the traditional sense, but symbolic, requiring openness, listening, and honest willingness to see oneself without masks. What does the other represent within you? Which part of yourself does this person symbolize? A lingering memory, a hidden desire, a repressed talent, a forgotten wound? The return of this figure in your dreams indicates that a part of you is crying out for integration. In the dream, the other is your mirror. What they reflect can be disturbing, enchanting, disconcerting, but always revealing. Now that we've explored how the other can serve as a symbolic mirror of the self in dreams, we can deepen the topic by examining projection and shadow mechanisms, which explain why certain faces won't leave us alone, even when our eyes are closed. The repetition of certain people in our dreams isn't limited to the direct symbolism of what they represent. It's deeply connected to projection and the presence of the shadow, two of the most complex and revealing pillars of Carl Jung's analytical psychology. In its effort to maintain balance between conscious and unconscious, the human mind frequently uses projection to deal with internal aspects the ego isn't ready to accept. These often repressed contents emerge in dreams as familiar figures, calling our attention to what still needs integration. To project is essentially to attribute to another what is ours, whether admirable qualities or rejected traits. When these projections go unrecognized, they become repetitive, returning as dream images that disturb or enchant us. The person who appears again and again may be a projection of an ideal we constructed, an unrequited love that became a symbol of emotional need, or even a trauma that still echoes in the unconscious. Dreaming of them is the psyche's way of retrieving that projection from the other and bringing it back into consciousness for understanding and reinterpretation. The shadow, meanwhile, comprises the aspects of our personality we reject, deny, or are unaware of. It may contain both negative impulses and unrealized positive potential. The shadow forms through everything that for any reason couldn't be integrated into our ideal self-image. In dreams, the shadow often manifests as figures that cause discomfort, fear, frustration, or even obsession, especially when those figures are familiar and carry strong emotional charge. At this point, repetition becomes a clear sign that something unresolved is demanding recognition. The person you keep dreaming about may be unconsciously carrying part of your shadow. They might represent a quality you deny in yourself: repressed anger, a yearning for autonomy, the courage to speak up, or even sensuality stifled by moral patterns. They can symbolize what you wish to be, or what you most fear becoming. These dream images don't appear to punish or confuse, but to offer clarity. When we ignore shadow contents, they manifest in life as compulsions, repetitive patterns, and emotional suffering. In dreams, the unconscious stages a symbolic theater where forgotten or rejected parts take human form so we can finally confront them. The insistence of certain faces in our dreams is the psyche's way of saying, "Look at this. You need to acknowledge this part of yourself." Recognizing a projection is an exercise in humility and responsibility. It requires seeing that what we perceive in another, positively or negatively exaggerated, can be a reflection of ourselves. By doing so, we free ourselves from unconscious influence and reclaim psychic energy trapped in external images. The dream figure ceases to be an obsession and becomes a symbol of transformation. At the same time, embracing the shadow is an essential step toward individuation. It means accepting that we are contradictory, complex and multiple, that within us coexist light and dark, courage and fear, desire and guilt. The dream delivers those separated parts of our conscious identity in the form of another human being, so we can finally become whole. Dreams persist because there is urgency. Each repetition carries a deeper layer, a different nuance. an additional emotion. Instead of fleeing the image or silencing the dream, Jung invites us to face it as a revelation of what needs to be seen. The person returning is not only external, they are part of you. Recognizing this is the first step toward turning discomfort into wisdom, fear into strength, repetition into freedom. Within Carl Jung's analytical psychology, the concepts of anima and animus hold a central place in understanding dreams with recurring figures. These archetypes represent the unconscious images of the feminine in a man, anima, and the masculine in a woman, animus, although, in a broader modern perspective, they can be seen as symbolic expressions of the opposing poles that inhabit every human soul, regardless of gender. When these inner images are projected onto external people, especially those with emotional ties, they tend to return in dreams insistently, mysteriously, and transformatively. When we repeatedly dream of someone, that figure may be embodying our anima or animus. They appear to reveal not only an emotional longing or unconscious memory, but an inner facet, crying out for recognition. The anima, for example, manifests in men's dreams as a woman who can be seductive, maternal, provocative, magical, or destructive. She represents feelings, intuition, and the relationship with the emotional world and the unconscious. The animus emerges in women's dreams as a man who can be wise, critical, authoritative, inspiring, or threatening. He symbolizes logos, structured thinking, inner authority, and life direction. When these figures appear repeatedly and intensely in dreams, it signals that the ego's relationship with those archetypes needs to evolve. The dream person, often someone from daily life or someone with whom there was an emotional involvement, becomes, symbolically, the living manifestation of these inner forces. Their frequency is no accident. It reflects the need to balance these opposing energies within. The more resistance to integrating these elements, the more insistent their presence in dreams. For example, a man who frequently dreams of a woman he was attracted to may actually be being called to embrace his capacity to welcome, feel, and listen. That feminine figure is not merely an object of desire, but a symbolic invitation to open his heart, empathy, and vulnerability. If he rejects these qualities in himself, the anima projects onto an external woman, and the projection returns in dreams until he is ready to recognize it within. Similarly, a woman who dreams of a man she admires or fears may be challenged to claim her own strength, authority, and capacity for action, qualities that, if not integrated, will continue to manifest through the animus image. It's important to note that these archetypal figures are not always pleasant. A negative animus may appear as a harsh, judgmental voice. A negative anima may emerge as a confusing, manipulative presence. This happens when the ego's relation with these archetypes is unbalanced, when the psyche is too identified with or completely rejects these images. The dream then becomes the symbolic stage where this imbalance is enacted, aiming to promote inner reconciliation. Recurring figures are therefore much more than simple memories of past experiences. They are living expressions of the psychic journey toward wholeness. By recognizing that the dream person may represent your anima or animus, you begin to see that the work is not about the other. It's about you. It's about what is unbalanced in your relation with the inner feminine and masculine. It's about how these forces express or are repressed in your way of being, feeling, acting, and loving. Integrating these archetypes means becoming more complete. It means developing deeper sensitivity, refined reasoning, sharper intuition, and more conscious action. When anima and animus cease to be projected and are lived internally, the repetitive dream dissolves, giving way to a new stage of individuation. The balance of polarities, harmony between reason and emotion, action and contemplation, presence and listening. The recurring presence of someone in your dreams may, in fact, be an ancestral call to integrate these archetypal forces. The person themselves is the symbol. The real content is what they represent in your soul. Listening to this call seriously is the first step toward profound transformation. The repetition of the same person in our dreams is no mere psychological accident or reflection of a repressed desire. It is, above all, an invitation to the most essential process described by Carl Jung, individuation. This concept represents the psyche's continuous movement toward wholeness, integrating all aspects that make us human. When something returns insistently in our dreams, like the image of a specific person, It signals that part of our inner world has yet to be recognized, accepted, or developed. Repetition is not an error. It's a script carefully orchestrated by the unconscious to awaken us. The path of individuation is neither linear nor simple. It demands courage to confront discomfort, honesty to acknowledge the hidden, and willingness to dive into the unknown within oneself. In this process, dreams play a central role. They are the purest language of the unconscious, revealing through symbols, metaphors, and recurring images what needs to be worked on. When a specific person appears constantly in dreams, it indicates they carry, as a symbolic vessel, a psychic function yet to be integrated. As we advance on the path of individuation, we are called to unite opposites, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, anima and animus, instinct and spirit. Recurring dream figures are often connected to these opposites. The insistence of a face in dreams reveals a fixation, something still dominating the psyche and blocking the free flow of vital energy. Jung called these autonomous complexes, nuclei of unassimilated psychic content that take on a life of their own and show up as obsessive thoughts, disproportionate emotions, and, of course, recurring dreams. In this sense, repetition isn't a mistake to be corrected, but an invitation to be accepted. The unconscious doesn't repeat without reason. It insists until the image's symbolic content is absorbed by consciousness and transformed into learning, integration, and growth. The person appearing repeatedly in dreams may symbolize something essential that has been neglected: a value, a decision, an unprocessed pain, an ignored talent. And while the ego resists, the unconscious persists. The individuation process necessarily involves recognizing these internal images. It's not about eliminating the dream figure, but understanding it, relating to it consciously, asking, "What are you trying to show me?" This deep listening breaks the repetitive cycle, dissolving the image's unconscious power and reintegrating it into the self's center. Repetition stops not because we forget the person, but because we have assimilated them. What was once an external, autonomous figure becomes part of our expanded self. Individuation also means letting certain illusions die. Often we project onto someone an ideal we wish to achieve or an emotion we fear experiencing. Repeatedly dreaming of someone may reveal that we're stuck in an unconscious narrative that no longer serves us but still exerts power over us. Recognizing this, no matter how painful, is liberating. It's the moment we stop living for internal ghosts and begin building a more authentic, conscious life. Moreover, it's important to understand that the unconscious doesn't just warn us about what's wrong, it also points out paths forward. The recurring figure may symbolize an aspect to be developed: forgotten courage, suffocated sensitivity, intuitive strength that needs recovery. By integrating the symbolism of this figure, we become more whole, more complex, more human. In that sense, each repetition is an opportunity for transformation. The true call behind these dreams isn't about the other, it's about you. It's about who you need to become. The figure that insists on returning is saying that something within you needs to be accepted, illuminated, and lived fully. And as long as that call is ignored, the dream will keep knocking at the door of the night until the soul awakens. The faces that repeat in our dreams are far more than persistent memories or emotional echoes of the past. They are symbolic messages from the unconscious, begging for attention, understanding, and transformation. Jung teaches us that whatever isn't integrated into consciousness repeats, not out of cruelty but out of necessity for evolution. The figure that insists on returning during sleep carries within it fragments of what hasn't yet been fully lived: denied feelings, shadow aspects, unrecognized projections, images of anima or animus, or even the silent invitation to individuation. Rather than fleeing these repetitions or repressing them, we must listen honestly. The unconscious speaks in images, and each returning person in a dream brings a part of you that wants to awaken. The journey isn't about the other, it's about you, and about your courage to become whole. If this content has touched something inside you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, each video is a step toward your inner transformation. And if you want to go deeper, watch the video that's on the screen now. It might be the next portal of your awakening.